Hello and welcome to this video workshop where I will show you how you can make this dress in every size and length you like. This video contains chapters. If there is a chapter you are already familiar with, just skip it and go to the next chapter. For this video you need a circular knitting machine with 22 needles. If you have one with 20 needles, you can use it also. You can also use a big machine with 40 or 44 or 46 or 48 needles, but it's not necessary if you don't have one. If you have one, use two machines. If you don't have two machines, use just a small one. You need yarn in the color of your dress. And you need two colors of scrap yarn, very contrasting to your working yarn. Your yarn needle, a pair of scissors of course, and a crochet hook, not for crochet but for closing, finishing the tubes. I will demonstrate in another chapter. I use a 5mm hook. So that's it. Follow the chapters step by step and make your own dress. Enjoy! This pattern is complete adjustable and you can knit it with just a 22 needle circular knitting machine or with a small and a big machine with 40, 44, 46 or 48 needles. By knitting the tubes for a big machine twice with your small machine, you will achieve the same result. All tubes are knitted with the use of the 1 second scrap yarn method that I will explain later. You close them, see the next chapter, and you tuck away the yarn tails before assembling. I just simply do that by poking in my crochet hook. Always when you are demonstrating, it doesn't go smooth. And I pull the yarn between the layers. And there ends the yarn tail on the outside, and I just cut it. Don't throw away the ends, but make a magic yarn ball that you can use for all kind of projects. Finish off all tubes before assembling so we have a nice clean start and the dress will be finished in no time. So do this with all tubes you need for this project. Then to the basic pattern. You can adjust, but I will explain it later. It's handy to mark all your tubes so you know what tube is what tube. I have 4 steps. The first tube is the front. You knit the tubes with the use of scrap yarn. The front tube is knitted 103 rows in the main color and 17 rows in the second color. The back tube is knitted in the main color and 140 rows. It's a bit longer than the front. And then we have the side panels. You knit 2 side panels because you have 2 sides, and also use scrap yarn, and you knit it in the main color 120 rows. And then we go to the shoulder strap. You knit it with the small circular knitting machine with 22 needles and you knit it 300 rows. Because it's going from front to back all the way. So you need to knit 2 shoulder straps with your small machine. And knit it in the second color. I'm going to explain how to adjust the pattern to other sizes and different lengths. First, I'm going to draw the dress. I'm a very bad drawer, but it will work out fine since it's very simple. Here is the dress following the current pattern. When you want to make it a size bigger, you simply knit with your small machine extra tubes, one on the back and one on the front, following this pattern with your small machine, and you just put it between the shoulder straps extra, so you will win another size. You can also put extra small tubes on the sides, so you knit extra side tubes and you just put on both sides an extra tube. When you want to adjust the length, you can make every length you like. You simply knit more rows. Say I want to make my dress 50 rows longer. Then I have to knit my tubes 50 rows longer. So I just add 50 rows to these numbers. The shoulder strap, because it's going from the back to the front, you have to knit twice the amount of extra rows on each strap because it's going from the back to the front. So simple is it. Just add rows to your tubes. So the length you knit in the length you want, and adjusting the size you can do on the go. And here is my dress in tubes. I have knitted 4 tubes with the use of big machine. And I have knitted my 2 shoulder straps with the use of a small machine. I have knitted 1 tube for the front, 2 tubes for the side, and 1 tube for the back. And I have knitted 2 small tubes for the shoulder straps. And when you don't have a big machine, you just knit these tubes twice with your small machine. In the next chapter, I will explain how to use the scrap yarn and how to close the tubes. You have to knit these tubes with the use of scrap yarn. I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can add the scrap yarn and how you can remove it very quick. First, I'm going to start to knit with my scrap yarn a couple of rows. And then I'm going to change to another color of scrap yarn. I'm just cutting my yarn, putting it to the inside between the last and the first needle. And then I take another piece of scrap yarn and put it into my feeder, also between the last and the first needle. Make sure that the tails are long enough to reach the table. And knit 1 round, so every single needle has to pick the color once. I'm cutting my yarn and putting my tail between the last and the first needle, as every tail I have used. And then I'm taking my working yarn. I'm hanging a long piece of thread inside my machine because I'm going to use it to pick up my stitches and do whatever I want to do with them. I'm going to demonstrate to you how I like to close my tube. But first, you have to put your yarn between the last and the first needle. And then you are going to knit. So what have we done? We have started with scrap yarn, changed to another color and knit 1 round with scrap yarn. And now I'm just knitting my desired pattern. That's not interesting because that's for a special project. And now I'm finished. I'm cutting my yarn a long piece because I want to use it to close my tube. I'm taking it out of the feeder between the last and the first needle again. And then I'm going to put my scrap yarn into my feeder between the last and the first needle. And I'm going to knit 1 round. See, just the same place all the time between the last and the first needle. 1 round, so every needle just picks the yellow color in this case 1 time. I'm taking it out of the feeder and I'm taking another piece of scrap yarn. And I'm going to knit a couple of rounds with the scrap yarn. And after knitting a couple of rounds, there are no rules. I'm just cutting my yarn and knitting until my work drops from the machine. So I'm continue cranking when my yarn runs out until my project comes loose. Now I'm going to demonstrate how I'm going to close the tube. I'm going to close the tubes with the use of my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. It's 5.5 millimeter. You can search for your size in your country. Tubes have 2 ends, the casting on and the casting off end, and we are going to start with the casting off end. I'm turning the inside to the outside and I'm going to show you the last knitted stitches with my working yarn that are captured between the scrap yarn. And when you put all those ends to the right, you will find your working yarn and you will find those 2 yarn tails of that single strand row. So those 3 ends we need. You see that the working yarn is in the middle and the yarn end closest to you goes into the first stitch we need to close the first pair. So I stick my needle through that last stitch and to the first stitch. Look, the working yarn is in the middle and those 2 yarn tails are coming out of those 2 stitches, and when you look at the rest of the stitches you will see that you can line them up easily into pairs. I'm putting my needles into all the pairs so you can see how it looks like. And this way you can see if you're doing it correct, because a tube with 22 stitches has 11 pair stitches. So I have to check if I have 11 pair. If not, I made a mistake with picking up those first pair, those first 2 stitches. Now I'm putting my needle into my last pair. Those are next to each other, but also in front of each other. And now I have 11 pairs. And I'm ready to close the pairs. So I'm sticking my crochet hook into that first 2 loops and I'm taking my working yarn, and with the hook I'm going to pull the yarn through the 2 loops. And now I've started closing my tube. I'm going to pick up the next pair, pulling the yarn through all 3 loops on my hook. From now on I have 3 loops on my hook every time I'm going to close a pair. And I'm going to close all 11 pairs. And my last stitch, you always end with a pair. And then I'm pulling my yarn another time through that single loop, and the tube is closed. You have the scrap yarn tails on the right. I'm turning so that my working yarn is on the right, and now I'm going to pull out that single row with scrap yarn. That easy, and you can lift off the rest, and now this side of your tube, the end is closed. And now we have to close the beginning of the tube, and that first stitch is a little bit more difficult to find. The hidden stitch is easy to find, but most people make the mistake by not searching for it, so they look at the loops and they think that this stitch is the first stitch and this is the opposite stitch, but it's not. You have to look at where your scrap yarn goes through. Find the first two loops where the yarn ends of the scrap yarn go through. And then you will find that the piece closest to you, that stitch, is a little bit hidden. This is the first stitch and the opposite stitch, and the working yarn is in between. And when you're not sure, you are going to count your 11 pairs again. Line them up. And my last pair, you always end with a pair. And then you continue closing as we did at the end of the tube, exactly the same way. When you are getting used to this, you don't need all those needles anymore. They are just for learning purpose. And sometimes I make also a mistake and I don't end up with a pair. And when I don't end up with a pair, I made a mistake. So I have to undo the closing by just pulling out those stitches and start over again with finding the real first pair. And then you close it the same way. Now you have your front tube, two side tubes, and your back tube, and two small tubes for the shoulder parts. They are finished at the ends, so now we are going to make the sides. We are going to join the shoulder part to the side tube from the bottom to the top on both sides. And when you don't know how to do that, see the next chapter and make this part twice. Hello and welcome to this quick explanation how to join tubes knitted with your circular knitting machine to each other in all possible ways. You can join side to side. You can join end to end. You do that when you want to make a infinity tube, for example. And the last possibility is end to side. So I'm going to show you all three ways to join them. The first variation is end to end. I will demonstrate it to you and explain it with a little drawing. I take two ends of my tubes and I lay them in position. We are going to use V-stitches to join the tubes to each other. When you look at your work, you will find just under the edge V-stitches. They are all in one line and just next to each other. So you have to find your V-stitches one by one. They're all in line, so it's easy to find the top one. On the other end, you are going to find also the V-stitches from the right to the left. They are also in line, so it is easy to find them. We are going to join them one by one, so make sure that you understand how to find them, and then we are going to join them to each other like this. We are going to join one V-stitch to one V-stitch, and we repeat that to the end. I'm using a contrasting color so you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to find myself the V-stitches. I'm starting with the one that's just at the edge or the corner, and I'm picking it up and I'm pulling my yarn through. Then I'm going to the other end and I find my first V-stitch, this one, and I'm going to pull my yarn through also, but not all the way. Make sure you keep a space between the two pieces, and then I'm going to pick up the next V-stitch at the first end. I'm pulling my yarn through, but not all the way. And then the second V-stitch on the other end. And this is basically what we keep repeating, picking up V-stitches on one side and on the other side. Make sure you don't pull your yarn tight and you are creating something like bars between the two pieces with your working yarn, and that's okay. Continue picking up those stitches one by one. And when you're finished or your yarn is a little bit short, you just have to pull at your yarn. And then I have to continue the last few V-stitches. And the ends are joined. And now I'm going to pull at my yarn. And you will see that the ends will be joined very nice. You can pull through your yarn all the way. I'm pulling it a little bit back because I don't need that much of yarn. Make sure the tension is right. And this is how you join the ends to each other. On the inside you have a nice ridge, and on the outside it looks as if it is knitted to each other. So when joining ends, just join the V-stitches one by one. The next joining is the joining side to side. We are going to join the sides of our tubes to each other. So I'm picking up my tubes, for example, like this. So we are going to join them in the length. I'm turning my example so it's more clear to see what I'm going to do. We are going to join the sides of our tubes. And that's very simple. I'm taking my contrasting yarn. We're going to join them like this. So when you put them like this, you will see lines with V-stitches along the edge. Again, those V-stitches. And when you line them up pretty, it looks like they're just knitted in one line. You see those V-stitches, they're just one row. See it as a rail track. And you are going to follow that track. When you stick your needle in the V-stitches, you will find those vertical bars, just like in a train track. And we are going to use those bars We start joining with picking up one bar and joining it with a bar on the other side, and then we pick up pairs. We are going to pick up 2 bars at a time, just like the V-stitches, but this looks a little bit different, and you end sometimes with 1 pair, but I will demonstrate. I'm going to stick my needle in the first V, and I'm going to find the bar. That's basically the back of the V-stitch. It's just one, little piece of yarn. Then I'm going to stick my needle in the first V-stitch on the other tube. And now I keep space in between, just as with the ends. And I'm going to stick my needle in where it came out. Those are big holes. And I'm going to pick up 2 bars at a time. Go in where you came out, pick up the next 2 bars. Make sure you get the vertical bars, the right ones, not the V-stitches. Go in where you came out, pick up the next pair and pair them up. Don't pull at your yarn that it goes tight, because then you cannot see clear what you are doing. Continue picking up 2 bars at a time. Don't skip bars. Don't go under twice. Just continue following the rail track, picking up the next pair of bars. Do that as far as possible, as long as your tubes are. This might look a little bit messy, but when you pull at your yarn, your tubes will be joined seamless. Your work will look like as if it is knitted in one piece on both sides. So when you join tubes side to side, it's usable on 2 sides. It's very simple. Just pair up the vertical bars under the V-stitches. So this is the second option, joining sides to sides. Then we have the last option, and that's joining the end to the side. I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to join the end to the side. Using also the contrasting color. We want to make it look like this. So for that I make a little drawing and explanation, and then I will show you how you have to join the end to the side of a tube. That is also very simple. You already know how to find V-stitches and how to find those bars, and we are going to combine them. So we are going to use the bars at the side, and we are going to use the V-stitches at the end. We are picking up 1 V-stitch at a time, and we are going 1 by 1 all the way. On the side we are going to pick up bars. First V-stitch 1 bar, second V-stitch 2 bars. First V-stitch 1 bar, second V-stitch 2 bars. So we are going to alternate the bars. I'm going to demonstrate picking up the first V-stitch, and I'm going to pick up 1 bar, because with every first stitch I pick up 1 bar. Keep space between the tubes. I'm picking up V-stitch number 2, and when I'm picking up V-stitch number 2, I'm picking up 2 bars. We are working in a series of 2 V-stitches, so I'm starting over. The third one is named number 1, picking up 1 bar. And the next one is number 2, and at V-stitch number 2 I have to pick up 2 bars. 1 V-stitch, 1 bar, second V-stitch, 2 bars. And continue all the way. You pick up 1 V-stitch at a time, and you alternate 1 bar and 2 bars. This V-stitch number 2, I have to pick up 2 bars, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, and go as far as possible. And then you just simple pull at your yarn. You can pull at whatever yarn tail you like, and your work will close nice, without wrinkles, as if it's knitted together. A little rich on the inside and on the outside, complete seamless. And this is how you join tubes with the end to the side. You join V-stitches 2 bars, alternating 1 and 2. We also know how to join the ends of the tubes to each other with the V-stitches. And now we know how to join the sides to each other by joining pairs of vertical bars, which gives a very nice seamless texture. In the next step, when you have finished your side panels with the shoulder parts, you are going to join both panels to the back panel, and you start the same way from the bottom all the way up to the top, and you will end up higher than the side panels. So don't panic if that happens, that's normal. And then your work should look like this, and you are ready to finish off by joining the front panel. You put it on the back panel, and then you fold over your sides to the fronts like this. I have to walk around to also fold over the other side like this, and you join the sides to the front panel from the bottom to the top all the way up. Now your dress is almost finished. We only have one last step, and that's finishing off the yarn tails. That's very simple. You have those ends. You take your yarn needle, you put it in, and now you are going to close by just simply going through both corners of the tubes like this. I'm going to make a half knot around my needle, but you can knot whatever you like or want to use. And then I'm just simply pulling through, and now it's finished off. And I'm going to stick my needle between the 2 layers of the color of my yarn. Make sure it's between and not through the outside, and let it come out somewhere else. Pull, cut, and it will disappear. And you do that with all yarn tails, and then your dress is finished. When you know how to crochet, you can crochet a border if you like some lacy border, or you can make a border at the end. So feel free to join those 2 skills together in this party dress. Thank you for watching. Now you will see a few of my other projects. Now you are ready for all kinds of projects with your circular knitting machine. I have more than 70 free workshops for all kinds of different projects. And all those free workshops are for different sizes machines. So check the description of this video for the link to all the workshops in just one list, and add it to your library because I'm adding constantly new projects. So stay updated and join my channel. Please give me a thumb up and feel free to tip me. Check the description of this video for all needed information and more. Stay safe, with love from Holland. Bye bye.